Matter of fact, I started with Belk in high school when I was going to school in Franklin, but they didn't have a job up there after school, but the one in Clayton did, so I got my first job as a part-timer, as a student, and then liked it so well that I went to work full-time after I graduated, and then was moved down to Walhalla. We had a little store in Walhalla, and I was moved down there as the store manager, the smallest store in the Belk organization, and got started there. So and then moved to Griffin, Georgia, and then to Anderson in '65. We had then what was called floor managers, and the downtown store, this one had 3 floors, home floor, which was in the basement, and then a first floor and a second floor. And I came here as manager of that small home store in the basement. So, now at that time, Mr. Gallant Sr., Erskine Gallant Sr., who came here in 1919 and started this first Belk store here, was still living and still active. And his son Robert was active along with him. So,
what was Anderson like when you moved here?
If you had a headache after 9 o'clock at night, you were in trouble till the next day, because there wasn't anything open past 7 or 8 o'clock. It was pretty much the downtown area and went just a little bit out, but not too far. I know that when you got up to Anderson University, you were out in the country. When you got up, the Belvedere Plaza had just recently been built, and so it was there. And one of the big interesting things at Belvedere Plaza was it had a McDonald's, and that was a big deal to the people then. But when you got that far out, you were out in the country. So a lot changed since then.
What was downtown like?
Downtown was bustling. As a matter of fact, our store was in the Rim Park area. Like I said, it took up just about everything there. You looked across the square, and the building you see over there now, the kind of the cream color with the green thing above it, was our store too. It was our bargain annex. We had an operation there, and then where all these buildings are gone now, of course, you had J.C. Penney was there, Bale's department store was there, and Woolworths was there. Most of the activity though was downtown. Belvedere Plaza, you had down south of town where White Jones is, you had a big W.T. Grant building. They took all of what is now White Jones. White Jones at that time was still working with Sullivan Hardware across on the other side of the square. And over there also was the Gene Anderson department store. He was kind of the upscale department store of the time. And but the business was done right on the square. And at Christmas time, it was just a madhouse. Traffic was awful. As a matter of fact, we had the parking lot that Mr. Gallant built behind the store when it was built as a deck over the railroad cut. And that property back there, that deck or parking lot, was the biggest parking space we had in downtown. And as a result of that, we had to have somebody out there on the gate that would monitor traffic, because otherwise we wouldn't have any parking spaces left for our customers. But they were they would park, come in the back door, and go to our store there. It got to be a lot more there than it was out front, because the traffic was so bad. As a matter of fact, it was even bad on our parking lot. And then the lot across from ours, that empty parking lot is where we parked our employees. And then on the corner over there, where the county has some offices there, the old church building, we owned that. After the church moved out, we bought that from them. They moved the graveyard from behind it, and we renovated that building and put a lot of our offices in there. But this was a hustling, bustling town, downtown, before the Anderson Mall opened. So it was a lot of activity.
Did you get pretty much anything you needed downtown?
Just about anything you wanted or needed was down here, yeah. And the only thing that we tried that didn't work was being open at night. And to begin with, we didn't go to the mall. We spent several $1 million renovating the interior of our old store and stayed with it and did good business. But by the early 80s, we realized that in order to do the night business, and that's where about half the business was coming from retail, was at night from 6 to 9. So we decided to go to the mall and give it a shot. So we went up there, we bought the land in the back of the mall and built our own building and hooked on to the mall, and started out there in August of '84, and it just boomed. It was unbelievable. 6 to 9 at night, we would do as much business as we would from 10 to 6. So
people who never got a chance to come in the store when it was downtown, remind people what it was like.
Well, it was 6 different buildings. Mr. Gallant came here in 1919 and was out looking. Mr. Belk had sent him out from Charlotte. He'd been working for him up there. Sent him out from Charlotte to find a location. He said, "Erskine, you've been doing a great job here. Go find yourself a location." This is how scientific it was. "Go find yourself a location and we'll build a store and we'll put your name on it and my name on it, and we'll start a new division of the company." So he was on the train. He didn't have Anderson on his list of places to stop, but the train stopped to take on water and wood for the steam. So while it was stopped, he came up the steps from the old depot, started walking around the square, and he saw a sign in one of the windows, and it said Lassiter's Department Store, and then a sign down in the corner said "For sale." So he said, "Well, I've got some time, I'll just go in and talk to Mr. Lassiter." So he went in, he found him behind the counter in the store, and it was 2 buildings, center buildings, in this Rim Park space. He went in, started talking to him, found out that he was wanting to retire. He had nobody to leave the business to. He had 2 daughters, but they weren't interested. So he said, "Well, I'll just sell it." So he put the sign there. Mr. Gallant started looking around, talking to him more, and the more he talked, the more interested he became. So he said, "Well, you know, this is kind of a bustling place." He saw all the activity out on the square. So he went back to Charlotte and told Mr. Belk, said, I found this location, Anderson, South Carolina, and there's a guy down there with a dry goods store, which is what they called them then, that's wanting to retire, and he's got it for sale. So I think we can buy it and we can move in and just start our business up. So in April of 1919, Mr. Gallant opened the 19th store of the Belk organization in Anderson. And then from that, he grew it to about 40 stores in mostly northeast Georgia and Anderson and Greenwood and Seneca around here. So that was the start of it. And he had the Anderson downtown store was one of the premier stores in the Belk organization for years. Never was the biggest, but it was one of the most profitable and one of the best operated in the company. So it was real easy when I stepped in 1986, when Mr. Gallant Sr. had already died, and then Robert Gallant, his son, kept them and ran them until '86. Then he retired, and I stepped in as president of the Anderson division. So we had 12 stores in our division, and but it was not a difficult thing to do. Just step right in behind some people that have made real success in the retail business and carry it on. So, but Anderson was growing then. A lot of the city, county, and chamber people were at odds, though. There wasn't a spirit of cooperation like there is now. And so that probably held it up for a few years. But when everybody started kind of working together, then things started really moving forward. So,
when you came here, you said the store was 3 levels.
Yeah.
What were those levels, and what could people get there?
Well, you had the lower level, or the basement. Now, when I say 3 levels, I'm talking about 3 floors. The levels, you had different levels on each floor because Mr. Gallant came in, he bought the first 2 buildings that were for sale. Then his business started growing. He started looking for ways to expand. So he'd go over to the left of him and he'd find a building, he'd buy it or lease it, knock a wall through it, put archways like you see in the buildings behind us here, and about 3 of them along. And it may be a little different level than the one he just left. So you'd have a little upcline, or you'd have maybe a step up or a step down. But he started expanding it from 2 buildings and eventually reached 4, plus the patio shop here. So when on the first level you had the first floor, you had all the home store goods, all home furnishings, everything to do with home, with fabrics. We used to sell a lot of fabrics, and all of that was in the home goods area. On the first level, you had men's department. You had boys 8 to 20 sizes. You had ladies' furnishings like hosiery and cosmetics and gloves and things like that. And then you had women's and children's shoes. Then at the very back, you had a ladies' sportswear department that was what we called our budget sportswear. Then on the upper level, top floor, you had all women's wear. You had women's wear, the lingerie, the dresses, the suits, the sportswear, and all of that was located up there. Plus, we later added fine china, silver, and crystal in a section up there too. So, and then we had a little corner that used to be a tea room that was a little small restaurant. And in the holiday season, around Christmas time, we would turn that into a toy department. So we had toys up there in November and December, but mostly women's wear on that level.
Well, you mentioned that. Let's talk about the Christmas time. Was the parade sort of the kickoff, or did it start before that, or?
Well, it started before that, really. We started right after Thanksgiving, getting Christmas decorations up, and I remember in one of the middle sections there, Robert Gallant had been to New York and saw a lot of animated things in the windows of Macy's, I think it was. He liked all of those things, and so he came back and he said, I think I'm going to buy us one of those and we'll put that in there to get the kids' attention. So we did things like that, but we started it usually Thanksgiving, or even a little sooner than that. We'd start working on it. So, but it was the parade was always kind of a shot in the arm, and a lot of people thought that Christmas didn't start until you had the parade.
But downtown back then was still a destination during Christmas, right?
Yeah, up until the mall. Now, when the mall opened, even though we weren't up there when it first opened, the business downtown started dying off, and so it was slowly dying because of the mall. Now, the mall originally was just a Myers-Arnold store where Dillard's is now, and of course Penny's was at the other end. And then it was just a strip from one end to the other. When we went in up there, we went in with Sears plus a lot of extra shops, but so it then became an offshoot from the center, going back and making a Y, going one part going toward Sears and the other part going toward us. And then that's when the mall really just shut down the downtown area.
Do you remember how many people worked at this, with Belk's downtown?
Oh, I don't remember exactly. It was probably a couple of hundred people totally, part-time and full-time. As a matter of fact, for years, you couldn't talk to a young person around Anderson that at some point hadn't worked downtown as a part-time person during Christmas. And I still get people today when I see them on the street that remember all of that and say, oh yeah, I remember downtown Anderson. I was there. Of course, one thing that we had that nobody else had, now Bales had an escalator. We had the South Carolina's first self-leveling elevator, and that elevator was made by Otis, and when we moved to the mall, they took the gate, the brass gate, and it was brass because the lady that operated it, Frances Jones, had a bottle of brass polish and a cloth and white gloves, and any time that she wasn't running that up and down, she was polishing that brass door. So but we had we must have had, I would say, at least 200 people that were working down here.
What about restaurants downtown? Where did y'all eat when y'all went to lunch or took a break?
Well, McCleskey Todd, which was a drugstore that faced out on Main Street, had a lunch counter. You could eat there. The Woolworth store that was on the square over here had a lunch counter. You could eat there. Several little sandwich shops, but that was mostly it. And I lived close by, so I just ran home and got a sandwich. So, Mr. Gallant always believed that you hire the best people, and if you do that, it'll make your job easier. You hire them, you treat them fair, you pay them fair, and they'll stay with you, and they'll do a good job. If they don't, then you move them out and move somebody else in. But if he was somewhere, whether it be in a restaurant or anywhere, if he saw somebody working there that really was doing a good job, he'd say, we need them in our store. And before he would leave, he would usually talk to them. And a big chunk of them would come to work for us. So he looked out for good people. He said nothing beats good people. So he believed in it wholeheartedly.
What's the biggest change in downtown since those days?
Well, biggest change is retail is gone practically, except for restaurants. And the other change is that the buildings that are here, besides the restaurants, are offices and not retail. So that's the biggest change I see.
You think we'll ever see retail come back downtown?
Probably not as a retail environment like it once was, because this thing of having buildings side by side just doesn't work in today's downtown areas. If you look at all the downtown areas that are doing well, they're usually doing it with some special shops like antiques and specialty shops. Sometimes they will do okay, but parking is an issue. Even when you put parking decks in, people still don't want to walk. But that was the big draw for customers. And shopping at night. Shopping at night is important. People work in the day, and with the two-member families working, it made it tough to come downtown between 9:30 and 6 o'clock and be able to shop. So the malls were the answers to their dilemmas. So it's just a way of life. It's a change that came along. And I tell you, we tried staying open when we were down here before we moved to the mall. Nothing worked. We tried 2 nights. We tried Monday nights, didn't work. Tried Friday nights, didn't work. Tried Thursday nights, didn't work. Tried Thursday and Friday nights, didn't work. We tried everything that we could think of. When it got past 6 o'clock, you might as well lock it up and go home. So that's the big problem with downtown businesses today.
What was better about living in those days?
Well, it wasn't quite as hectic. The pace was much more relaxed. You know, if you go wide open from 9 to 6, and then you can relax for a while, then you can do that again tomorrow. But if you go wide open from 9 to 10 or 9 to 9, then tomorrow you're so darn tired and worn out that it's hard to keep that pace up for a long period of time. So I know even Sunday openings, that's something that retailers do now, and it's the norm. It's unusual if you're not open. But we were never open on Sundays downtown. We were not open on Sundays in the mall as long as the blue laws were in effect. Once those were repealed and everybody else was open, then you almost had to do it to compete.
Didn't a lot of places used to close early on Wednesdays too?
Oh, yeah. As a matter of fact, when I came here in '65, there was still the small shops around town would close at noon on Wednesday, and you go now over to some of the smaller towns like Belton or Honeypath, places like that. Most of the locals are closed on Wednesday afternoon. And of course the reason for that to begin with was that maybe the shop owners, there would be only a man and his wife and maybe his kids that ran it. It was a family operation, and they weren't willing to leave it with somebody else, so they either had to close or turn it over to somebody else while they were not there. So,
yeah, and remind people what you've been doing since you retired from Belk.
Well, after about a month, I realized that retirement was not for me. I'd tried everything under the sun, so I started looking for things. I wound up, after a couple of years, buying an insurance agency. And I said, okay, knew nothing about it, but I said I can learn. And so I decided I would buy it and educate myself. And so I went to schools and went through all of the rigorous things that they put you through there for insurance, and was doing well. And after about 3 years, a guy came along that had more money than I had resistance, so I wound up selling it. And so then I said, what am I going to do? So I went up to the mountains, because I'm from up in that area, and I bought some property up there, put some roads in, put some water systems in, developed that, and sold the biggest part of it. And then I started looking around here. I knew I wasn't going to ever work for anybody again. I had, so there wasn't many options, insurance or real estate. So I like the idea of commercial real estate, because the people you're talking with and working with and dealing with were professional people who understood business and understood the concept. So I got into that, and have been doing it now for a few years, and can go kind of at my own pace. I was going to do it just part-time, but it's turned into almost a full-time job. So, but that's okay. I enjoy what I do.
What do you think Mr. Gallant would say if he walked through downtown now?
Hard to know. He would really be shocked. But he was a guy who kept up with everything, though. He would be, you know, a lot of the old timers, they liked things like they had always had it. He was not that way. He was flexible. He was anxious to change if it was going to help him, and he would be the first in line to do it. He bought the air rights of the railroad out here to build this parking lot, and leased it for 100 years, and built the parking lot, and that is what saved the business at Gallant Belk when the mall opened.